All right, here we go. It's Bobby G here with my my preview and predictions for the UFC 183 event Saturday night on pay-per-view, featuring the return of both Anderson Silva and Nick Diaz. Now, I'll get to that main event here in a few moments, but first I want to, as quickly as I can, go through the rest of the fights on the pay-per-view card. All right, the first fight on the pay-per-view card is Thiago Alves, Pitbull, versus Jordan Mein. I think that's how you say his last name. You got a guy here in Thiago Alves who's still relatively young in his MMA career. He's only 31 years old, but he's been with the UFC since 2005, a long, long time. There was a time when he was actually one of the top contenders in that welterweight division of 170 pounds. Matter of fact, he actually had a stretch where he won 7 fights in a row. Since that time, though, he's struggled a bit, and he's gone 3-4 in his last 7 fights. Jordan Mein, however, seems to be going in the opposite direction. He seems to be climbing. He's ranked 13th in the division. He is 3-1 in the UFC and only has 2 losses in his last 13 fights. He is 6 years younger than Thiago Alves, and that might prove to be a determining factor in this fight. Thiago is a big, big guy for 170 pounds, and that size has proven to be a hindrance when it comes to his gas tank in the past. So with all those things considered, I'm going to pick Jordan Mein to win this fight by decision. All right, next up we have Tim Boetsch, the Barbarian, taking on Thales Leites, two ranked guys in the UFC middleweight division, which is 185 pounds. Now, Tim Boetsch has always been an exciting fighter. I've always enjoyed watching his fights. He obviously, he not only tries to go for the win, obviously, but he's always looking to finish and certainly has the ability to finish a fight at any given time. Thales Leites, you can't deny this dude is on a roll. He's coming off a 7-fight win streak, including his last 2 wins by knockout. Now, Tim Boetsch has proven that he has knockout power, that he has one-punch, fight-ending knockout power. And Thales Leites has actually never been knocked out. So when I see those types of things, I see those factors, it always makes me think this could be the time. This could be the time that guy gets his first knockout loss. So, having said that, I'm going to pick Tim the Barbarian Boetsch to knock out Thales Leites. All right, so next we move to the UFC lightweight division, which is 155 pounds. You got Iaquinta taking on my man, Joe Lauzon. Now, Joe Lauzon is one of my all-time favorite fighters. He has been since the first time I saw him fight. He's been with the UFC since 2005 when he started on a season of The Ultimate Fighter. And since then, I know he used to, I don't know if he still has the record, but at one point he had the record for the most fight bonuses. That would be like fight of the night, knockout of the night, submission of the night, things like that. And essentially what that means is whether he wins or loses, Joe Lauzon puts on an exciting fight. And I expect nothing less than that on Saturday night. But Iaquinta is no pushover, though. This guy was the runner-up on his season of The Ultimate Fighter. I think it was season 15. And he has shown improved skills in every fight since that time. But what I do notice is about these two guys is that Joe Lauzon has an amazing 18 wins by submission. And all 3 of Iaquinta's losses are by submission. So if you're going by the stats of it all, the obvious choice would be Joe Lauzon by submission. And I think I'm just going to go that route. I'm going to pick Joe Lauzon to win by submission. At least that's what I hope happens, because I really like Joe and I want him to win. Okay, next up we turn to 2 top 10 ranked fighters in the UFC welterweight division. That would be 170 pounds. We've got Tyron Woodley versus Kelvin Gastelum. Now, Tyron Woodley is a scary, scary dude. He is a physical specimen. Now, I realize that being all ripped and looking good with your shirt off doesn't guarantee that you can fight and doesn't guarantee you'll win. In Woodley's case, he certainly has the skills to go along with the physique. He's gone 14-3 in his career, and he's ranked number 3 in a super competitive welterweight division. And when you look at Kelvin Gastelum, all he's done in his career is won his season of The Ultimate Fighter a few years back. He's put together a 10-0 professional record and a 5-0 record in the UFC. So considering all these things, this fight is a really, really tough one to pick. When Tyron Woodley is on, he just destroys people. He looks unstoppable at times. But I've also seen him look really unimpressive. His fight against Rory McDonald, he looked like a completely different fighter. So it kind of depends on which Tyron Woodley is going to show up on Saturday night. Kelvin Gastelum just continues to improve and impress people, and I think even surprise people by continuing to win and beat guys that most folks would pick to win against Gastelum. I think if Kelvin Gastelum can survive the first round, an early onslaught from Tyron Woodley, and he can take this fight into later rounds, I think he'll have the advantage. So I'm going to predict that's going to happen, and Kelvin Gastelum is going to win this fight by decision. And that brings us to the main event of the evening, featuring Anderson the Spider Silva versus Nick Diaz. Now, anybody who's been a fan of MMA over the past decade or so knows all about these two warriors. Anderson Silva is widely considered to be the best fighter of all time. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody that would say he's not the best fighter in the history of MMA. Nick Diaz, unfortunately, I think, has been known more for his out-of-the-cage antics as opposed to what he's done in the octagon, the cage, whatever you want to call it. He's a very skilled fighter and a dangerous opponent for anybody. The fact is, Nick Diaz always comes to fight, and he always makes for an exciting fight. And we know that Anderson Silva has some of the best highlights in the history of mixed martial arts. So regardless of who wins this fight, I think it's going to be exciting. Now, it's been just over a year since Anderson Silva last fought. His last fight was when he suffered that gruesome broken leg. Now, having said that, considering he's been off for over a year, he still comes back as the #1 ranked contender in the middleweight division. Now, for Nick Diaz, it's been almost 2 years since he's last fought, and it's been over 3 years since he last won a fight. Now, I think if we're talking about Anderson Silva from 2013, he wins this fight against Nick Diaz easily and every time. But we're seeing a whole different Anderson Silva this time. Not physically. I think he's going to be physically, he's going to be 100%. It's the mental aspect that I'm curious about. Will he be afraid to throw leg kicks, considering that nasty broken leg he suffered against Chris Weidman? Will that affect his striking game? Now, I think you know what Nick Diaz is going to do in this fight, what he's done his whole career, which is continue to come forward, be aggressive, perhaps talk a little trash, try to get you to get into a fight with him. He's certainly not going to be afraid of Anderson Silva. But will that work to his advantage or not? Will it allow Anderson to be a counter striker in this matchup? So I don't think this is going to be a boring fight. I really hope, obviously, it's not a boring fight. I really hope that the old Anderson Silva is back. Nick Diaz only has 2 knockout losses on his record, the last of which was in 2007, and it wasn't even a knockout. It was actually a doctor stoppage due to a cut above Nick Diaz's eye. But we know that if there's any one fighter who can knock out any other fighter at any given time, it's Anderson Silva. So he has shown time and time again that he seemingly can do whatever he wants whenever he's ready. I've always said that it seemed like with Silva, whenever he's ready to end the fight, he turns it on and ends the fight. And everything else is just kind of him playing with the other guy. So I'm actually going to pick Anderson Silva to win this fight by TKO. Not necessarily a knockout, but by a ref stoppage of some sort. Alright, so there you have my preview and predictions for the UFC 183 pay-per-view on Saturday night. If you get the opportunity to watch it, you should do so. It's going to be should be an exciting card, and you can watch along. And perhaps if you remember what my predictions were, when I end up being wrong, which is usually the case, you can point at the TV and mock me and elbow your friends and say, "Oh, that guy Bobby, he's an idiot. He doesn't know a thing about MMA." And I would say you're correct. Thanks for watching, though. By the way, please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. That would be awesome.